What's up, Foot Clan? This episode is brought to you by Hulu Plus Live TV. Hulu has live sports. Watch your favorite football teams all season long with over 90 live channels, plus access Disney Plus and ESPN Plus all in one plan. No cable guy, cable box, or extra cable fees needed. Switch to Hulu Plus Live TV today. Live TV plan required. Restrictions apply. Access content from each service separately and select ESPN Plus content via Hulu. Learn more at hulu.com.
The DFS studio is brought to you by DraftKings. Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast with your hosts, Kyle Borganoni and Matthew Betz.
Welcome in. Tuesday, September 19th. It's Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. I am your host, Kyle Borganoni. And I am joined, as always, by Matthew. He's not sponsored yet, Betz.
Hopefully soon, though, man. I mean, come on. I am wearing, this is my Flying Dog t-shirt. It's a brewery in Maryland where my wife's family is from. So shout out to Flying Dog Brewery, one of my favorites out there. But I love that little intro there, Kyle. You really made sure everyone knew exactly how to say your name. And I imagine after hearing that, everyone knows how to spell your name now. So well done, because you always get a hard time of when you intro the show. You go way too fast. No one knows what you're saying with your last name. So yeah, man, say it loud, say it proud, dude. Come on, for the Borgs.
You got to keep things fresh in the relationship. And there's almost no closer relationship than that of a podcast. I mean, let's be honest, Betz. There's spouses out there that say, man, I wish I could talk in my, spouse's ear as much as you guys do. So I would say that we get a lot of, close quality time. And that's a good love language for a lot of people. So yeah, as long as people are, they're expecting me to go fast, I got to mix it up. I got to keep things fresh.
I respect it.
The relationship of podcasting in the world is just years from now. They're going to study this generation and say, what happened to them? What happened to those degenerate people that started just on a Tuesday listening to a podcast to talk about something that won't happen for the rest of the week? But that's where we're at with DFS for the rest of us. That's what this podcast is all about. So if you're new to DFS, you're in a good place. I think that's what our podcast is probably best at, is making this inviting, but also going deeper for those that want to go deeper. We're going to recap week 2, part of our cash process. I know some people are like, are they going to come on the podcast and just hype their best things? No, we're going to be real. We're going to be transparent and just say, here's what went well, here's what went wrong. If you wanted to jump on board Jamar Chase, that train, join the club. And then we're going to turn the page, look at week 3, talk about some of our favorite spots for the week, some early salary standouts, talk about all those things. So we're going to do that. So let's talk about that cash from week 2.
Straight cash, homie.
You have a little note on here that I lost a water bet about Jerick McKinnon, but
yeah, let's start the show there. You got to pay up, dude. I mean, Jerick McKinnon. Imagine putting yourself on the line with Jerick McKinnon. Couldn't be me. Literally, could not be me. Kadarius Toney didn't die. He was out there. He did some stuff finally for us. Caught a couple passes. It was kind of funny. Actually, I was forced to play him in a dynasty league, and I was like, oh, this is gonna go so terribly. And it kind of came out of the gate like he had a couple catches early. I was like, all right, here we go. This could be a thing. We got the report. Kelsey might be a little limited. I was like, man, this is lining up so well. And then, of course, he did like nothing for the rest of the game. So that's classic. But the bottom line is you're a loser.
Okay, that's fine. I'm fine being a loser. But imagine paying out a water bet. Imagine. Does our company even do that anymore?
Yeah, I'm going to make sure everyone tag Kyle on Twitter, in Discord. Make sure he has to pay up. And I want him to record this. I want him to post it. And the best part would be like if one of your kids was like talking trash to you while you were doing it or something, like that would come, full circle. That would be great.
I'm going to give an unpopular take, and you know what? I might lose some salary for this. Okay.
Uh-oh.
Like, I love the Wheel of Water. I love that we have an app for it. I love that it's part of the show's history. It doesn't bother me. I don't mind getting wet. Like, I'll stand outside in the rain. I don't care. It just,
you like
it doesn't.
You're sicko.
Yeah,
You're
I know.
Sick, Kyle.
It doesn't bother me that much to get wet. Like, it doesn't feel like that big of a punishment. And I was Mike's co-manager last year, and Mike was last place, so we were watered. And I was just getting doused over and over, and I go, it's fine. I don't mind. There's lots of worse punishments out there in fantasy football. So I will say this about Kadarius Toney. He is good at targets per out run. That is what, if you're in a league that only rewards for that, bets on the season, he's at 38.5%.
That's what he does, man. And that's what he was doing last year, which was just hilarious.
Yeah, but in my snaps league, Jerick McKinnon, he outsnapped him. So anyway, let's talk about our cash lineups and the pain that you might have experienced. I also think it's important, and I wrote this up, if you really want to further dive into my cash lineup every single week on the website, I give a free article that is Borg's cash lineup review for each week, and I go pretty in depth. I even get to show very, very exclusive content that only Betz and I got to message back and forth. That's the kind of stuff you get to see. I mean, that is prime stuff, like our Slack messages. So if you say something stupid, Betz, I might use it.
I'm terrified now. I'm put on notice here.
Yeah, but I just want to say this. It's easy to lock into one person in a lineup and say they cost me when cash lineups are constructed from a decision tree. If you go down this lane, it opens up this door. If you go towards this player, it closes the doors to other players. Like for instance, I played Jaden Reed. And so because I played Jaden Reed and I had him in our top plays, I took out Luke Musgrave. Okay. Which that's just how I did. I didn't want two Packers in my lineup. It also meant I didn't play AJ Dillon. So that could work. But also on the other end, it took me off certain other plays. So Puka was a player that was in my final pool. He was in my final two lineups, and then he didn't make the final one because of how I constructed my roster. So just think about that, like instead of zeroing in on certain players. Also, I'll just say this. It was Josh Kelly week, and a lot of people said he was bad play. And yes, the results were really bad. I will say that Josh Kelly did not cost people because 61% of the field in my double up was on him, and we know that at least half the field cashed. But it's what he allowed you to do to pay up at other positions. I think what this slate came down to is, did you pick the correct elite play? Because there was 10 elite guys between running backs and wide receivers that we liked this week. And if you're on the wrong side, if you had Calvin Ridley or Jamar Chase, or I don't know, if you had both of them, or Josh Jacobs, or all three of them, then you were like me, you didn't cash. So I had the full write-up there. I was on Josh Allen. I loved Josh Allen this past week, and I felt great about that part of the process. Deebo Samuel did totally fine for my roster, but at the end of the day, I did not hit the cash line.
Yeah, it was a very tough slate, I thought, in general for cash, because I'm not kidding when I said I made 7 or so teams and felt very good about all of them. And that's when you know it's a very difficult slate, where it's like, this isn't so clear cut of who you should be playing. And it's harder in those slates because it does usually come down to, a 2v2, a 1v1. I had a lineup that I went with that I felt very good about, honestly, since Friday evening. And I stuck with it through the weekend. It was an Anthony Richardson lineup. It had the 3 stud wide receivers, Chase, Devontae, and Calvin Ridley. It had some cheap running backs. It had Rashad White. It had Joshua Kelly, Luke Musgrave. And then I kind of sat there and I thought about it Sunday morning. And I really, really, really got terrified of the Josh Allen potential massive game. You and I talked about that. Just an awesome get-right spot at home. When are we ever getting Josh Allen below 8K? Last year when he was just on fire, we were paying 8.2 and trying to figure out how to jam him in, right? So it just felt like a really good spot. So I ended up coming off Richardson to Allen, came off Rashad White up to David Montgomery and down to Deebo. So it kind of had this decision tree that kind of flowed, like you were saying. And overall, I did fine in head-to-heads. I missed the cash line in double-ups, but it definitely hurt. I'm not going to lie. It hurt when Anthony Richardson comes out for 2 rushing scores in the first quarter. I was like, oh no, here we go. Rashad White has an awesome day, a career day, in fact. That hurt. But it's kind of what happens, and you roll with it. Fortunately, I had a pretty good week in a smaller field GPP that helped, still kind of stabilize everything and still come up in the green. But yeah, for cash, man, it was rough this week. It was very difficult. And I think, honestly, one of the more difficult cash slates that I can remember in a pretty long time.
Yeah, my final swap was between, I ended with Jacobs, Ridley, and Deebo instead of Pollard, Devontae Adams, and Puka. So that's what cost me. And some people might say, well, then why don't you just play 2 cash lineups? You could have you could have been fine. If I would have done that last week, you could have seen the other side of that equation, because I went 100% in head-to-heads last week, which was insanely hot. But if I would have switched off, I probably would have ended more like at 60, 70%. So there's two sides to it, and I just want to give this adage. We brought this up on the podcast. I bring it up a lot. We are more open to the possibility of almost being right than almost being wrong. Like, I could have almost been wrong last week, easily, by who I switched off of. And this week, same thing, I caught the other side of it. So keep that in mind. Don't try to justify things or make things sound better. That's why I get to post, hey, here's what happened. Here's my pool of players. Here's what it gets to look like. But still, I think a lot of people understand that there's a pool of players. There's opportunity cost. It's a fun part of the process. Okay, so stay with us as we give our cash picks throughout the week. But let's talk about some big winners. In the DFS pass, man, we had some fun winners this week. I know cash for some people, like we mentioned, was tough, but one of my favorites this week, Betz, was from 2Drags23. All right, they posted this in Discord. I've never won a tournament before, and then they said, too bad it was just the 25-cent quarter jukebox on DraftKings. They turned 25 cents into $600, and I just want to say this. That is a hard tournament. That is a really hard tournament because a lot of people, like myself, have max entered that in the past. And so that's 150 lineups at a quarter each. That's over $37. That's it to kind of try out the optimizer. So that is a tough tournament. So no shame in saying it was just a 25 cent, but you won a tournament, 2Drags23. Congratulations.
I would love to turn $37 into $600. That sounds pretty sweet. Doesn't matter what level of entry fee you play. Like, that's phenomenal. So that's awesome. And like you said, part of the fun of some of these lower stakes contests is if you're not an MME player and you're trying to get used to it, like, this is where you do it. You don't do it in the milli where you're having to go up against a ton of people that do this all the time and have the bankroll. You can do it where you can actually max enter at an affordable rate. And with this win, like, potentially maybe you jump up into the next kind of tier of contests you play. So yeah, congrats. That's awesome. Super fun when that happens.
Yeah. FanDuel has ones that are just a nickel. So if you want to try out the optimizer and say, hey, I've never done 150, you can use that. It's just a way for you to say, hey, I don't have the bankroll in the Millie Maker to put that up. So yeah, feel free to do that on Showdown, Slates, whatever it is. I'll read another one. We got an email that came in. Holy, and then I'll have to blank out some stuff. Holy expletive, boys. Thank you for the knowledge, input, and hard work placed in all my DFS contests this week. I thought last week was just a fluke, but for the price of a coffee per day, you've paid for my family's Christmas. Dude, we're making Christmas happen in September. So this is from Fantasy Nobody, but that's what we're all about. The Christmas spirit in September, right?
I love it. Christmas is my favorite holiday. I'm excited for it this year. And this person apparently is too. And that's super fun. Like, we love what we do because it's just fun. And the best part of it, I think, is not just of like when I do well or when Kyle does well. Like, truthfully, we care so much about how you guys do. So getting stuff like this, makes our day. So we appreciate it. And congrats. That's phenomenal.
I'll give one more shout out from Benny Hanna in the Discord. I really like this one. It says, I kept the train rolling. I'm 2-0 in cash. Moving on. Hashtag Keenan Allen forever, which, come on. Keenan Allen catches touchdowns now?
Hey, we're going to talk about him later. Don't spoil it.
I love it. So if you want to get the DFS pass, you go to dfspass.com. If you got the ultimate draft kit way back in the day, as in like a month ago, you can upgrade for an even cheaper cost and use the promo code DFSPod to save some money. So go to dfspass.com and you can get on that. But let's talk about the slate.
State of the main slate.
Each week, Betz and I refer to the sportsbook lines that we find at DraftKings. That's where Betz and I play. You go to sportsbook.draftkings.com. And before we talk about the week 3 slates and the lines, let's check in on a couple of wagers that we've made, and I'll let you start us off, Betz.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the ones that are not going so great. And I just want to turn this back to our best ball season. Man, I really wanted to get that mid-tier option at quarterback this year. Last year it was Jalen Hurts that just smashed for fantasy. If you got Justin Fields late, he was incredible. This year I was like, okay, I don't love the round 2 guys. Like, maybe I can get this mid-range guy. I took a lot of Deshaun Watson. I took a lot of Deshaun Watson stacks. The Browns look horrible. And look, I mean, let's not bury the lead. Like the Nick Chubb injury is the storyline here. And man, I just feel for like him, the human being, of the injury that he had. It's devastating. And obviously that has ramifications for fantasy. But besides that, like Deshaun Watson looks broken. I mean, it's hard to watch. He's been one of the worst quarterbacks. And you look at EPA, completion rate over expected, all those metrics through 2 weeks. I don't know, man. I think those teams might be dead. The other one that also looks terrible, because Brock Purdy looks so good, is San Francisco under 11.5 wins. And it's a long season, so of course things can change. But I was kind of worried about, the Purdy, just short sample size we had last year. Of course, the elbow injury, the Sam Darnold, Trey Lance, like extravaganza going on in the background. And then, a team that potentially looked to be primed for regression. They do not look like they're going to regress. They look awesome. And now they've got a cakewalk matchup on Thursday night as 10.5 point favorites against the Giants without Saquon. So they're looking like they're probably going to start 3-0. Bad news for the under 11.5s out there.
Yeah, no, I did a deep dive on Brock Purdy, which we'll be talking about on the Dynasty show that comes out Wednesday. And it's just hard based on the system to look at this team and say they're going to fail. Like with Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey in the lineup, they've averaged 32 points like in their span. So when you're scoring that much, you have a good defense. I mean, it was close, right? With the Rams, like they were tested, but you kind of knew they were going to pull it out.
Yeah, and it's almost hard to fail. Like with the weapons he has, it's honestly hard to fail. Now he has to play well enough, be in the right spot, make the right read, deliver the ball on time, all those things. Nothing to take away from him. But it is hard to fail when your weapons are Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, who, by the way, is playing 100% of snaps. What is happening? He's going to break fantasy, dude. So yeah, the Niners are fun right now.
All right, so one that hasn't gone so well, and no one, not even you, could see this coming, but I had some Chargers divisional futures.
I, for one, am shocked.
Man, 2 weeks in a row, this team is leading in the fourth quarter, and they lose. But we kind of saw that happen. It's going to happen again and again, especially in the AFC. Starting the season 0-2 is a death sentence. Now, the division, like the Chiefs are leading the division at 1-1. So it's possible. It's still possible, but I just don't feel great about those. I will give you one that hit this past weekend. I took a little drive this weekend. I was telling bets. I drove to North Carolina, then to Tennessee on Saturday, and then back to North Carolina on Saturday, and then back to Georgia on Sunday. So it was quite a little triangular drive that I took. And when I crossed the Tennessee state line, I said to myself, I feel so confident in my Dalton Kincaid over that I'm going to parlay it, because that's what I need to do, right? That is the best way to do props, right? Is just if you feel strong about something, parlay it with a bunch of other stuff.
Obviously.
All the time when Betz, we have a channel in our company Slack, and Betz will post, when he's adding stuff. And I feel like all the time, different people like Jeremy are just like, sweet, well, I'll parlay all of your bets together. It's like, buddy, come on, just like one
what
at a time.
What could go wrong?
One at a time. So I did simple one. Dalton Kincaid over his receiving yards. Josh Allen over 224 passing yards. And the Bills to win. That sounds pretty simple, right?
Yeah, that was nice.
It was great, and I got an odds boost enough to be able to cover a lot of my losses from my cash. So that was nice to be able to parlay that together. So go to sportsbook.draftkings.com if you want to play. Let's move on to week 3 and talk about the games that we need to pay attention to bets. So hit me with the 50-point total and our top team implied totals for the week.
Dude, this Chargers and Minnesota game sounds so fun. I mean, 54 points, and it is by far the highest total on the slate. As of our recording, you will not see another one north of 50. That's kind of been the trend, is that there's been some lower totals early in the season. But we usually, like we're talking about, right, last week it was like KC and Jacksonville, and it was like, oh, it's at 51. It's fine. It's not like this elite tier game environment. Vikings and Chargers, 54 points. Looks awesome. The top 5 team implied totals on the slate are the Chiefs at 30.5. We've got Dallas almost at 28 points. Miami and the Chargers are tied at 27.5. Minnesota, Jacksonville right behind them, tied at 26.5. And then Baltimore at 26. So we have pretty high team totals for some teams that we were aggressively stacking in best ball. And the market is certainly on them here. So it looks like these are going to be the teams that we want to target this week.
I think this is a great lesson for people that are new to DFS, and maybe just a refresher, but the teams that have the top one, you mentioned Kansas City and Dallas, they're over 12-point favorites. Okay, so this is like, you kind of have to learn, like, what do I do when the team on the other side, like the Cardinals and the Bears, are some of the worst teams in the league? Do I have a bring back? So often we'll talk about these as onslaught stacks. You can lean into a team like Kansas City or Dallas, get 3 pieces, and then maybe the bigger question is, do you bring it back with those other teams? And I found more often than not, you don't have to. Like, right now, if you're playing 3 Cowboys, who on the Cardinals do you feel most confident bets in bringing it back for a tournament?
Why are you laughing?
I just don't know.
Also, shout out to Josh Dobbs. I did not know you could ball like that. Just smack me in the face, hitting his over on his
DFS pod listener,
yardage.
Josh Dobbs.
Yeah. Truthfully, if you were, the only player I think you could confidently say, and not even confidently, but like the field never plays him, and he's touching the ball 20 plus times, is James Conner.
He was, what's funny is our optimizer loved him this past week.
I couldn't do it. I know.
And he was
good.
He was very good. Same thing. Him and Rachaad White. When I look at them play football, I go, this isn't the most beautiful thing. Like James Conner, I know what he is. This long in the league, like a bruiser, tough, can catch the ball. So it's really hard, but sometimes the optimizer looks past the emotional part of playing fantasy football, right? So with onslaught stacks, though, like for the Cardinals, you can get a cheap player. I don't know, like Michael Wilson still running routes. I just think that at the end of the day, you lean into teams. You lean into team implied totals and in good offenses, not so much saying I have to force another player. So when we talk about stacking and bringbacks, you don't have to every single time. Okay, that's kind of my point. So think about that this week.
Real quick, Kyle, on that. I think too, it matters on which site you're playing a little bit more. Like if you're playing on FanDuel where touchdowns matter so much, not that they don't matter on DraftKings, but guys can get there, with like 8 catches for 90 yards, and it's in PPR, that's fine. And if you get the 300 or the 100-yard bonus, for like a receiver, that can work, and you don't have to get there as a touchdown scorer. So I think it's very different on FanDuel. Like these games where these guys or these teams aren't projected to score many touchdowns, it's tougher in that situation. You could talk me into like, okay, and not just on this slate, but like in future slates. I remember there was a slate 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where like the Chiefs were favored by like 14 points and no one wanted to play the Jets on the other side. But like, I don't know, Braxton Berrios or whoever was on the roster at that point racked up catch after catch after catch in a negative game script. That kind of stuff can work. But on FanDuel where touchdowns matter, just you need to think a little more critically about it, I think, personally.
So in terms of the games that are going to be most popular this week, it's obviously Chargers and Vikings is just sexy. It's 2 teams that are 0-2 that'll break your hearts, and maybe both of them could lose this game. That's how it feels like. Both of them are destined to lose this game. But at a 54 total, it's great. Minnesota, they've still kept up what they did last year, which is a high pass rate over expectation. They ranked 2nd in the league behind the Chiefs. I love that. Here's what I'm trying to figure out with Minnesota, because they're a defense that you've always been able to kind of pick on. And Brian Flores is their defensive coordinator, former Dolphins head coach. He used to be a guy that ran the highest rate of man coverage in the league. And it was kind of like, okay, if it's a Brian Flores defense, that's what you can do. He's kind of gone the exact opposite this year, and they have one of the lowest rates. So I can't really use some of my past like spreadsheets and just go, oh, this is what I can exploit and this is what I can see. So it's a matchup later on in the week. I think we'll get a better feel when you and I go through this game as obviously one of the best games to stack, that I can say, okay, on the Chargers side, here's what I'd prefer to do. Because if you're seeing more zone coverage, then, they have certain players that can eat that up. So we still don't know with Austin Eckler. Do you have any updates about his status?
No, I don't. The team said they don't have any updates either, so we're just going to have to rely on practice reports this week. The injury was a mild high ankle sprain. So even though it's mild, it could still be another week before we see Eckler. So we'll have to wait and see. If he does not play, I know people are burned by Josh Kelly, but he's another great tag this week. He's very cheap. He could fit this game stack or as a cash option.
All right, so tell me another game that you are interested in before the week.
Yeah, I'm kind of cheating here. It's the KC game, and it's mostly just Kansas City, truthfully, because they have, like we said, the highest team implied total. They're 13-point favorites. They're at home. We saw Mahomes and Kelsey limited last week, and we took an under in props on Kelsey just because we didn't think the books were factoring in the possibility that he wasn't 100%, and we saw he wasn't 100%. But Kelsey is now cheaper, and he will be healthier this week. And Mahomes bottled up 2 weeks in a row. Like, I want to bet on him, obviously, every week, but certainly after 2 down weeks, I really want to bet on him having success against a Bears team that has been bottom 3, bottom 5 defense in the league through 2 weeks. They've been atrocious, and they're down one of their top corners. So sign me up for some Mahomes stacks this week.
What if I told you that I looked at the DK salaries and I just glanced to see what Chase Claypool was, just to see, it was a little tease.
Nope.
I'm not saying to play him. Okay, I'm
yes,
definitely
you
not.
are.
I'm not saying to play
Darius Toney, Chase Claypool water bet.
No,
Okay.
I'm not betting on this guy at all, ever. I just wanted to know.
We did actually bet on him.
Chase Claypool under?
We bet against him.
Oh, on the season, that's true. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
What's up, Foot Clan? This episode is brought to you by Hulu Plus Live TV. Hulu has live sports. Watch your favorite football teams all season long with over 90 live channels, plus access Disney Plus and ESPN Plus all in one plan. No cable guy, cable box, or extra cable fees needed. Switch to Hulu Plus Live TV today. Live TV plan required. Restrictions apply. Access content from each service separately and select ESPN Plus content via Hulu. Learn more at hulu.com.
We're back. Let's keep talking about week 3. And you've got a super sneaky game, which I love, and got a little drop for that. Oh, no, it didn't work. Dang it, Kyle. Your one chance.
Come on, man.
I guess I'll have to display it on the Dynasty podcast. That at least helps me understand that this drop that I prepared for Dynasty doesn't work. We got to test it out in here. So give me your sneaky
Love
game.
it. Yeah, I put down on the dock here Atlanta and Detroit. Now, the reason that I'm potentially on this game, we'll see, is that it's already been bet up a half point. It opened at 45.5. It's up to 46. So we'll see what happens throughout the week. Really, this comes down to a couple things. We saw it last week. We talked about the concerns with Detroit, but these Detroit home games, man, like it happened again last week. Seattle was able to move the ball, and they put up a bunch of points. And we usually like to bet on Detroit having success. Now, there's injuries here, which is going to maybe shake up how this looks. Amon-Ra St. Brown is dealing with a toe injury. Dave Montgomery is unlikely to play, even though Dan Campbell called him day-to-day. They signed Bam Knight. So they're probably going to be without Dave Montgomery. I'm excited for Jahmyr Gibbs. We'll see what they do with his workload. Bijan always has a ceiling that we're willing to chase in a great game environment. And then, of course, they've got value options. Like we saw last week when Atlanta is forced to pass more than 7 times a game, nice. Drake London can get there. He's $5K. He's very cheap. Josh Reynolds, 4.2. He's very cheap. So there's going to be value options here in a game total that is certainly on the rise, being played in a dome.
Oh, you kind of snuck up on me there.
I am very, very sneaky, sir.
There you go.
Mr. Deeds, man. A Mr. Deeds throwback. Very sneaky. I love it. I love the options here. I was just doing a little deep dive on Josh Reynolds earlier.
He's been good, man.
He's been good, and then we forget him and Jared Goff kind of have a history together, right? They played together with the Rams, so yeah, 4.2. He was 3.7 last week. There's a lot of cheap options. Jahmyr Gibbs.
Kyle Pitts is 3.9, which is just so sad.
3.9 is like Dalton Schultz land. Like the worst place to be in for DFS.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So I will throw out that Denver, Miami. Although the total's pretty high, I feel like a lot of people aren't going to look at this game, but Russ, man, I don't care how gross it looks throughout the end of game stat lines. I understand he had a Hail Mary. He's at least pushing the ball downfield, and that's all I care about for fantasy. So in that game, if they're going to keep up with Miami, I want to keep seeing those options. So I think you can do a double stack and then find somebody on the Denver side to bring it back with. So I think it's Sneaky. Thoughts?
I like it. Yeah. The other thing too is Jerry Jeudy was just back for his first game last week. I suspect he'll be healthier this game. The other thing on Miami's side is they've got some injuries currently going on. Salvin Ahmed, groin injury, Jalen Waddle, concussion. So we'll see as the week goes on what happens there. But like if Waddle misses, I mean, Tyreek is already going to project well. He's so expensive. But without Waddle, potentially, he could just be an incredible play. And then you could double stack super easily if you get a cheap Braxton Berrios or Durham Smythe. You know, you could really get there. So I do like that game. And it could be one of those where like you just don't watch. You don't watch Russ. And then at the end of the game, you're like, 290 yards and 3 touchdowns. Sweet. Like it got there. So I like that call quite a bit, actually.
Smythe is cheap and he's on the field and he runs routes. And that's all I care about. So with tight ends, give me a bring back every once in a while. Which game do you want to be underweight on for week 3?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the Browns already. I just don't know how you can have any confidence in their situation right now. They're now taking on Tennessee. We know Tennessee historically is a pass funnel. We saw it in week 1 when Derek Carr averaged over 9 yards per attempt. And we saw it last week when Herbert Stacks got there and Josh Kelly failed. Jerome Ford is 4.8K. I'm telling you right now, he's probably going to be a cash play, but he's an easy fade in tournaments. We've seen it now 2 weeks in a row. The running game can't get going against Tennessee. So I'll be fading that situation. And I don't really have enough confidence, though, to play Deshaun Watson stacks as leverage. Truthfully, maybe he figures it out, but it's tough. And then on the other side, Tennessee's run game, it was okay last week, but they've got major offensive line issues going on, and Cleveland's front 7 is very, very good. So I could see this game just being an absolute slugfest, like a 17-13 sort of finish, and no one really gets there for fantasy.
I think I agree with you. I'm just glad that somehow, some way, Uncle Jerome Ford season, just you stumbled and bumbled your way into it in the worst way possible because Nick Chubb, big fan, University of Georgia here. Yeah, 4,800 is cheap, but the matchup's not great, and I just need to see where he lines up. I'm not going to X him out early on in the week. I think we need to say like, hey, it's a cheap running back. Same thing with Josh Kelly last week. It did not cost your lineup. It's kind of just how does the field. If the field is 60+% on him in cash, I think that's a conversation. If he's like 30% and everyone's like, hey, I got burned last week, but we did see that Monday night game. Like that's the difference here with, Josh Kelly and everything. Like everyone fresh in their mind saw Jerome Ford go for over 100 yards. So do you think that's a conversation at least later on in the week?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a conversation for tournaments. I think, and we'll see they're going to sign someone, I think. They're not going to go into this game with only Pierre Strong and Jerome Ford on the active roster. So it just depends who it is. Maybe they bring back Kareem Hunt. I don't know. But yeah, this is a situation where like a few years ago in DFS, people might overreact to what just happened. But now that people build with projections and optimizers and stuff like that, like it's going to want you to play Jerome Ford, right? He's just super cheap. He's going to touch the ball a bunch. I think he's going to be a great cash play. I think he's going to be a very good fade, though, in tournaments.
Yep. I'm going to say New Orleans and Green Bay. Both of these teams are banged up, especially at the running back position. And it feels like it's going to be a defensive struggle. This is my little pro betting tip. Okay. I'm not a pro, but I do want to give a tip. If there are teams that play on Monday night and you have early lines, like I put the early lines in our spreadsheets on Monday night, and then I update them on Tuesday. Always what happens, whoever plays on Monday night usually ends up losing a couple points or the game starts to go under because the only thing that could happen on Monday night is injuries and chaos, right? So just something to keep in mind, like with New Orleans, they had Jamal Williams get hurt. Cleveland, they had Chubb get hurt. Things happen. So I just see this game being Green Bay at home. I think Green Bay should have beaten the Falcons, if I'm honest. I think they should have won that game. So it's not a game that I really want many pieces from. Which team are you most confident hits their over? And last week, you and I nailed this. We said San Francisco and Atlanta.
Yeah, this week, I would like to go back to Buffalo. They're at 25.5. We finally saw them get right last week. And this is a spot that against Washington, just last week, we talked about Russell Wilson. The Hail Mary is going to inflate things. That was just a crazy play. But even before the Hail Mary, they put up 27 points in that game. So Josh Allen, you can certainly bet on that offense. And the thing with them is like they are finally getting a run game. Like James Cook is explosive as heck. He looks awesome as a pass catcher and running the ball. So you kind of have this balance now where they're not one-dimensional. You've got Kincaid stepping up. Steph Diggs is always in play. Gabe Davis actually had a great game last week too. So like things are coming together for Buffalo. They can go over 25.5 points this week.
Yeah, I just believe in Dallas. Their implied total is 27.8 on the road against the Cardinals. There's so many different ways. Like beyond just the defense and how it plays, Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, we'll talk about him later, is an alpha. And I still feel like we're not getting him priced as an alpha yet. So I believe in Dallas a lot. Which team are you most confident hits the under this week? And we nailed both of ours last week, the Raiders and the Bears.
Yeah, this week I'm going to take the under on the Jets, which I'm trying to find on our sheet now, is 16.8 points. So basically it's right at like 17.
That game just went down to 36.5.
Fun. Very fun. Taking on Bill Belichick, who's 0-2, and the Patriots. So if you're thinking about ways this goes south, think about Zach Wilson seeing ghosts in this spot, esque to Sam Darnold from Monday Night a couple years ago. like it could be rough. And now you've got, Breece Hall publicly displeased with his workload, like just bad vibes on the Jets going up against New England.
I don't want any part of the Panthers. I just can't see myself saying I want to play Miles Sanders, which is the only kind of bring back. Your boy Adam Thielen hit over his receiving prop, but it was gross. Hayden Hurst, gross. Terrace Marshall, goosed, sadly. And then it's like DJ Chark, Mingo. It's like everything in the game plan so far with Bryce Young is the exact opposite of what the Texans are doing for CJ Stroud. With Bryce Young, let's keep things simple. They're not really like making him challenge like down the field in intermediate areas, which is what Stroud is slaying in right now. So you're getting a conservative game. They're 5.5 point road dogs in Seattle, and 18.5 points I feel like is going to be tough. Like they couldn't do it against the Saints at home on Monday night. I just don't see why you'd want to go there at all. So maybe our new thing is just to bet these team implied totals, because last week we were 4-0.
Take it to the bank, right? These are gold star locks. You can sign up for our Patreon if you want to get our really exclusive. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's funny. Like I kind of forget that these are a market that we can bet, and like every week we come back on the show and we're like, oh, yeah, so we did pretty good, like 3-1 or 4-0, or sometimes 2-2, whatever. But like every now and then I'll bet some sides for fun. I'm so bad at betting sides, dude. I should just stop doing it and just.
Everyone's
bet
bad at that. Yeah. Hey, give some a shout out for how the props went this past week, because it was another good week.
Yeah, it was fun. We took one more on Monday Night Football to move us to, I think it was 5-2 this week or 6-2 this week. I can't recall off the top of my head, but yeah, another super profitable week. We've been very selective in trying to figure out the best ways to attack, fading players like Hayden Hurst, fading players coming off injury, stuff like that. So we've been really trying to make sure our projections are up to date, get a good read on matchups, usage, stuff like that. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been profitable. Hope we can keep it rolling.
Yeah, and we give those out. Bet starts an article on Wednesday and then slowly adds throughout the week. We don't have a huge volume. Some people like to do that, and I think that's totally fine. Ours is to be a little bit more selective, and I think you're 11-5. That's what we're at on the season.
Yeah, on the season. Yep.
And so one of those losses is me trying to dunk on Zach Wilson. So don't even count that. Don't even.
We took it under on Zach Wilson's rushing. When did he turn into Mike Vick?
He just said, I don't want any part of this. All right, one more segment.
Salary standouts.
All right, we're going to go through these pretty quickly, but we wanted to give you a lay of the land of which players we like for week 3. At quarterback, I like Mahomes at 8.3 with the highest team implied total. I get that you're paying up, but 8.3 is still not as expensive as it should be against a Bears defense that has been rolled over by Jordan Love and Baker Mayfield. So I don't mind paying up for Mahomes.
Yeah, I think he's the best play. I mean, obviously, you have to pay for it. But like, if you think about the spot, right? He struggled for 2 weeks. He's at home. Travis Kelce is going to be healthy in this game. He was not 100% last week. He is now. And the Bears, dude, they're just giving it up to everyone. Jordan Love had no weapons in week 1. Didn't matter. Baker Mayfield, yep, come on down. Rashad White, career day, yep, come on down. The Bears defense is atrocious. And Justin Fields, man, the quarterback play is an issue. I think you're going to see a ton of short fields from Mahomes. It's not hard to envision, like 250 and 4 touchdowns from Mahomes in this game. So I love him. If you can make it work, I think he's a great play. The thing is, though, I think you can make it work, right? Because we talked about those running backs. Like, if you get a Jerome Ford, if you get, we'll talk in a minute about like Kendra Miller with the injuries to New Orleans guys, like super cheap. You can make it work this week if you get some of those cheap running back plays.
Yeah, I want to throw out Geno because he was on the doorstep last week of people just saying the Seahawks are done. And then, of course, they went to Detroit and they won in overtime. And he looked good. 5.7. He is showing up early in the week as someone that you go, okay, I can play him at home against the Panthers. They have a pretty good team implied total of 24 points. So Geno is a cheap option. If you wanted to go down there, you can do that. I mean, we don't know Anthony Richardson's status, or, we get a rushing quarterback that we could talk about. But any other names you want to bring up? I think people will be curious about CJ Stroud at 5.3 only because of the passing volume. And that game against Jacksonville is intriguing, right? Those are two teams that have produced some fantasy stars so far in the season. I don't think I can have that kind of trust. In a tournament, I get it at 5.3, but I just want to throw his name out there. Anyone else for you?
Yeah, I wouldn't go there in cash personally, just for me, but it's hard, it's difficult to say anything negative. Like, he's been great. And we can't forget, he also ended the game banged up with a shoulder issue, went out and just balled against Indy. And that just kind of gives you an idea of the state of the Colts secondary. So I think in play this week, taking on Houston is the Baltimore Ravens. So it's been a while since we've seen a massive Lamar Jackson spot. Could be this week.
Josh Allen on FanDuel is 8.8. On FanDuel, the pricing's different, and the way that quarterbacks are kind of bunched together, I just pay up for the elites. I'm not trying to mess around on FanDuel. On DraftKings, you get the point bonuses. It's a little different. So Josh Allen's my favorite early in the week for FanDuel. At running back, talk to me about those cheap guys because, I don't want to play two of them, but I think one of them makes sense.
I might be playing two of them because there are some incredible wide receivers on this slate, and they are so expensive. If you want Justin Jefferson, you're going dumpster diving somewhere. If you want Tyreek Hill, you're going dumpster diving. Josh Kelly is 5.4. Last week was not good. The matchup was terrible. This week, it's the best game environment on the slate by a landslide. If Eckler is out, I still think Josh Kelly is totally fine for cash. We already talked about Jerome Ford. He's 4.8K. And then Kendra Miller is 4.3. Jamal Williams is banged up with the hamstring issue. Alvin Kamara still has one more game on his suspension, so he is out for this game. And last night, the only active running back behind Jamal Williams was Tony Jones Jr., who scored his first career touchdown twice. Shout out to him. So we'll see about the injury report. I would be a little hesitant with Miller just because I'm not 100% positive he would get the majority of the looks. He's talented, he's explosive, but he hasn't played right in his career because of the hamstring issues, and he missed a ton of camp time too. So I'm a little more hesitant on that one, but at 4.3, what do you really need him to do?
Yeah, this is the Monday Night Football pricing glitch because these come out before. So that's why they're priced so low. I don't have my thoughts yet, which is great. It's Tuesday. I don't have to have them fully thought out. A couple of running backs that are higher priced that I like this week. Tony Pollard, 8K. If you just said, hey, I have to have a Cowboy because of their team implied total, I think Pollard or CeeDee Lamb make a ton of sense at their price point as huge favorites against the Cardinals. I like Travis Etienne a lot. 6.9 at home against the Texans. I think he had some cramps this past week, so he'll be fine. The matchup's great. And then Tank Bigsby did not touch the ball last week at all in kind of their hurry up. So he could still steal some goal line work, but at 6.9, that is way too cheap for his role. So he's one of my early favorites. And then Jahmyr Gibbs is incredible in terms of his targets per route run. 36% bets through 2 weeks for a running back is off the charts. So last week, he had 9 targets. He plays the Falcons this week, 6.6 inside a dome. Any thoughts on Gibbs?
Yeah, I mean, like everyone, there's no denying the talent. There's no denying that he's going to catch the ball, which on DraftKings, that's what we look for. The tricky thing is, I'm so mad at DraftKings, dude. 6.6. The guy
They
hasn't
priced
really
him
done
up.
that much in the NFL, and yet they're already aggressively pricing him. So you have that. Everyone knows the Montgomery situation, so everyone's going to be so excited to play him. But, like, are we really going to be surprised if Craig Reynolds comes in and farts around for 20 touches with Dan Campbell? No, right? Of course. That said, if Amon-Ra is out, they have no choice but to get Gibbs involved in the passing game. So we'll see what happens this week with the injuries in Detroit. He's explosive. He can get there on 12 touches. You know, he can do that. Caught 7 balls last week. If you're getting that on DraftKings, it's really hard to argue.
Mike and I were talking about for our team, like, okay, Craig Reynolds, do we add him? And then we just kept referring to him his first name. What do you think about Craig? What do you think about Jerome? What do you think about Matt? Like Matt Burita. I was like, are we just adding some like interns to our team? That's what it sounds like. Just Craig. What do you think about Craig? So those are some guys early in the week we like a lot. James Conner on FanDuel is only 6.3, which is super cheap for FanDuel. If he gets the usage, he makes sense. Obviously, you wouldn't want to play Pollard and Conner in the same lineup, but throwing him out there. Let's get to the wide receivers because there are some awesome plays this week. CeeDee Lamb, 7.7 jumps out to me. I don't think we realize like his usage in this offense has been over the top. Like the best way to compare who CeeDee Lamb is he is DeAndre Hopkins when DeAndre Hopkins was young. Like wiry, crazy hands, and then runs routes all over the field and is targeted at like an insane like 30% targets per route run. So CeeDee Lamb, I love a lot at 7.7. You like my boy Keenan.
Yes. Straight up, I prefer CeeDee for $100 more, but I just want to throw Keenan out there. Now, I think he might be a little popular for tournaments, so we'll see just because the game environment is so good. But man, Keenan Allen, 9 targets, 10 targets through 2 weeks. It's just what he does. But he is currently on pace, and it's only 2 games, but currently on pace to have his highest yards per reception mark since 2017. Has Keenan Allen found the fountain of youth with Kellen Moore? Because his downfield role is not what I pictured at all. And you did talk about some of the zone stuff with Minnesota. Keenan just eats up zone left and right. So especially if no Eckler again, you could see another 10 targets coming Keenan's way. You are talking so dirty right now.
My mind's telling me no, but my body's telling me yes.
Oh man, it's a great time to be a Keenan Allen lifer. I like Truther is just not even good enough, just a lifer. I hope he lives forever. May Keenan live forever.
He will.
Jordan Addison, that same game, is way cheaper if you want some exposure to that game. That's going to be interesting for cash. Like, do you pay up for Jefferson? Do you go down to Jordan Addison, who's been good, but still not getting full-time plays? And then do you want to go somewhere else? Like you mentioned, like Josh Kelly's going to be in this game, Mike Williams. There's a lot of different areas to go in that game. So keep that in mind. In the middle tier, if Amon-Ra is out, which do we have an update on his turf toe? I feel like you talked about this early in the week, but it could linger for a little bit.
Yeah, there's no updates from the team, so we'll just have to wait and see what the practice reports say. But, it's one of those that kind of feels Terry McLaurin-esque, where it's not a super serious injury that's going to keep him out for weeks and weeks and weeks, but like it wouldn't be surprising to see him out there this week if he plays at less than 100%.
Yeah, I'm interested in Reynolds at 4.2. You have Zay Jones on here at 5.4. People will go box score hunting and go, that dude airballed last week. He had a touchdown, and they had, 3 touchdowns that they couldn't get the toe taps in. But Zay Jones is still fine at 5.4. He's a lot cheaper.
That's Zay Flowers.
Ah, dang it. Well, I want to bring up Zay Jones because I think people are going to have some Calvin Ridley wounds. We did talk about Christian Kirk last week. So Jaguars wide receivers in general, do you want to buy into them after being burned last week?
It's kind of a whack-a-mole, right? Like if you bought into Christian Kirk week 1, you weren't happy. If you bought into Calvin Ridley in week 2, you weren't happy. But like we did see a Kirk ceiling game. The other thing is that the Jags just haven't put it all together yet. We'll see if it happens. I mean, it's a small sample of 2 games, but Lawrence has struggled a little bit. And so if he gets back on track, I can certainly see that getting there. Zay Jones, though, we do need to be mindful. He was in and out of the game last week with a knee injury, so he could be a guy that is limited this week, potentially, or misses practice, so we'll see.
Yeah. Zay Jones, Zay Flowers. The one thing I'll say about Zay Flowers, 5,400, against Indianapolis, he wasn't the first read anymore when Mark Andrews got in there. So that it did change the dynamics, and that made sense, right? Like it wasn't just going to automatically happen, but the price is still too cheap to ignore his role on a full PPR site. So I like that a lot. I want to throw out my boy, Nico Collins at 5.3. I posted a video of him, just his targets. And that's kind of who I'm becoming. I'm not a thread guy. I'm more of like a, hey, let me grind the tape, post a video.
Love it.
I mean, it's enlightening. It's who I am now.
I love it. What did you see on tape?
Oh man. What I saw was, no, for real though, he was like running the same like deep in where they were just like, hey, let's just use his big body. And granted, there's a lot of pass attempts for CJ Stroud, a lot of them. So in a neutral game script, I don't think this team wants to pass as much as they want to, but this team is never really ahead. So
they also don't really have a choice, right? Like the offensive line is a mess. 4 out of 5 starters down last week. Dameon Pierce couldn't move the ball. They kind of have to throw the ball if they want to move it. And like you said, Nico's looked great. And his underlying metrics have been awesome. We also mentioned on the Dynasty show, I brought him up as like, go trade a second for this dude. Like, go get him. Because his metrics, like as a rookie, improved to year 2. And that was with Brandon Cooks on the field. Now we're seeing him as the dude. So yeah, John Mechie isn't really a full-time player. Dalton Schultz isn't doing much. Tank Dell's exciting, but unproven. So I think there's a lot to like with Nico.
What do you think about Tank Dell in cash? 3.6.
I haven't thought about it. Do you have numbers in front of you as far as what he played snaps wise and routes and stuff like that?
Yeah, let me pull those up because I was looking at him. He was 79% of the snaps last week, 10 targets, 7 for 72 and 1.
That sounds pretty nice.
At 3.6 on a full PPR site where I bet Collins will be more popular, but 3.6 is a punt.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just want to make sure that early in the week, I'm not crazy. All right. Stephon Diggs on FanDuel, 8K. I will be playing Bill's stacks on FanDuel because they're way cheaper than they need to be. At tight end this week, this might be a week where you and I are not punting the position. Travis Kelce went down $400 in price. I don't know why. He's a week healthier, plays against the Bears at 7.2. I'm kind of interested.
Yeah, and this could be a spot too where, like we said, if we do get those, low 5, upper 4K running backs, and you want to get up to Kelce, it's totally viable on this slate. And like you said, he's healthier, and the Bears' defense is Swiss cheese.
My punt early in the week is Durham Smythe, the aforementioned Smythe, 2.9 against the Broncos. I feel silly even bringing it up, but let me just hit you with this. 4th most routes run at the tight end position. Durham Smythe, just like we all projected, 9 targets in 2 games. That's fine for a punt play. 6 for 67. So if you want to punt, he's on the radar.
Yep. And especially if Jalen Waddle's out, it would make even more sense. Also throw out too, I think I'd probably prefer to find a way to get up to Kelce if you're playing an elite. But Mark Andrews at 6K, also a week healthier. We saw him have a bunch of the first read stuff. He just didn't really look, the same explosiveness that we're used to. Now he's taking on Indy, who just got carved up by CJ Stroud a week ago. So Andrews, whether it's in cash this week or as a tournament play, I'll be having some exposure.
I don't like to declare locks early in the week. These are famous last words, right? Like when I told you last night, guys, peek behind the curtain. Last night, when Kendre Miller was declared inactive, and I said, hey, Jamal Williams, he's a lock for 2 receptions.
I even said to you, I said, you just lost that bet. Before the game even started, I was like, why would you even say that?
And then, of course, he did. But this is my lock early in the week for cash. I cannot imagine, and the salaries have to work out, the Bills against Sam Howell are under 3K. Like, I look for 2 things in a cash game defense. Are they under 3K? Can they rush the passer? Bing, bang, boom. Like, we got it right here. Sam Howell is 2-0, by the way, which is just hilarious. Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder, the 2-0 boys, Baker Mayfield, just like we all imagine. But Sam Howell is 2-0, but he also sports the highest percentage of pressures turned into sacks. 36% of his pressures turned into sacks so far. He holds onto the ball, and this Bills defense is good, and they're favored on the road. So that's who I'll be playing.
That makes sense. There's other options too. I think the Jets are totally fine. Taking on Mac Jones, they're $100 cheaper. They're at home. We talked about that game environment being absolutely disgusting. What did you say it was? 36 points?
36.5.
I don't know if I've ever seen a total that low, except for like maybe a crazy wind or like rain,
We've seen some
snowstorm
Steelers games that get to 34, but not this early in the week.
That is insane. So the Jets look fine at 2.8.
Yeah. Defense, who cares? Who cares? But those are some options for you. If you want to play with us, go to ballersdfs.com. It's our DraftKings league. We mentioned earlier that we've had people that joined the league, entered the tournament, and they're saying, hey, I won a tournament for the very first time. You did pretty well. Little toot bets in one of our tournaments, right?
Yeah, I took second, which I hate victory lapping because I want to take first. So whoever that was that had first, I'm coming for you. But yeah, had a little fun sweat there going on Sunday with one of our tournaments in our league.
Yep. So join us at ballersdfs.com. Join the league. Enter the contest. Great contest to invite your friends, first-timers. You can be a part of that. Betz, sign us off. We'll talk later in the week, right?
Yes, sir. We are back on Friday, and there's so many things that I think are going to change throughout the week, so make sure you're plugged in to the DFS Pass and our Friday show where we get you guys ready for the main slate. Until then, have a great week.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at thefantasyfootballers.com.